Mayor Tommy Roberts. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. My guests this morning are City Manager Rob Mays and Eddie Smylie, who is our General Services Director and also Director of our Emergency Preparedness Division. Rob, our topic this morning is going to be emergency preparedness.
Yeah.
And we have created an Emergency Preparedness Division in the structure here at the City of Farmington. I want you to talk briefly about why that division was created and when it was created and what its responsibilities are.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, Mayor. It's something I think as an organization we're really proud of, and we want our citizens to know that we're as ready as we can be to handle unknowns. The nexus of it is that as we would have different types of significant events or emergencies happen, we commonly would, after the fact, get around the table and review what went on. And every single time we would realize there was ways we could have improved. We could have been more efficient. We could have coordinated internal resources better, and we could have communicated better with the public. And so that really became the goal, to say we need to go to the next step of being able to ensure the continuity of operations. And if we come in some Monday morning and a building's burned down, what do we do? Are we ready to, the citizens are depending on us. How do we coordinate our own resources? We have a lot of resources amongst 15 departments of the city. Believe it or not, it's possible for one department not really to know what the other departments have in order to assist them. And then finally recognizing we have to communicate better with the public. So we decided to form an emergency preparedness division within the city. We tapped Mr. Smylie to be that person and get him trained and begin the process of from very infancy now to a pretty sophisticated program that we have.
Thank you, Rob. Eddie, let's talk a bit about what it is you're doing, kind of on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. We know that City of Farmington is a partner with the county and other governmental agencies in the San Juan County Emergency Preparedness and Emergency Response Planning process. But the city function is separate to some degree. We still recognize that we're a partner. Talk a little bit about what it is you're doing week to week.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that our primary goal was in the very beginning of this was to get our employees ready. So that's in the early stages, and even up until now, that's been one of our primary goals, was to make sure our employees understood our preparedness efforts and what we wanted them to do. Number one, we want them to be prepared in their homes. So if we have an incident or a crisis, they're able to come to work and leave their families at home safe and be able to come to work and perform their duties. And two, once they get to work, to have some kind of plan in place, our communication efforts and operational plans to be able to deal with the crisis that we may be dealing with at the time.
So what form do those training efforts take? I mean, what is it that we do to actually prepare our employees for an emergency? And is it just an emergency in the context of what they're doing here in the workplace? Or, as you say, does it extend beyond that?
It does extend beyond that. I mean, one of the things that we've done is we've implemented a communication plan, and one of the things we've done is used Nixle, which is a communications platform, a mass communications platform, so we can reach out and communicate with our employees. That communication platform also gives us the ability to communicate with the public as well, which we're going to talk about here in a while. But that's one of the things we do. We test it regularly as far as getting people together. We've created an incident management team at the city, which is kind of our primary leadership incident management team, at least that initial phase of an incident, where we'll notify them, pull them together, and then decide where we need to go from there.
What kind of emergencies are our employees prepared to deal with?
Well, luckily, I mean, all of our preparedness efforts and planning, I mean, it kind of crosses emergencies. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's a specific emergency. The same plans and implementation efforts are going to apply, kind of regardless of whether it's a flood, whether it's a crisis water event. The same steps are probably going to take place. Some of the efforts will be a little bit different, but the same steps primarily will still be taken.
Well, I can imagine that some of our viewers might be thinking, what if you had an active shooter situation on the campus up here at City Hall? Are our employees trained through this emergency preparedness plan to deal with that situation?
One of the things that we did 3-4 months ago, I think we had a citywide training where we actually had the police department do some very specific crisis, emergency management type training for the workplace violence activities. And I think the employees responded very well. It was very well attended. And the police department did that specific training, but it was very specific.
Yeah, and that's an example of us being prepared internally. So let's say there was an active shooter or some type of a crisis out in the community. Well, our police and fire department are well trained and prepared and will respond and handle the immediate crisis, and they're great at handling what's happening dynamically at the moment. But if something was to be sustained for some level of time, and they started to need resources from the rest of the city, the Emergency Preparedness Division would be that central contact point. The police and fire can get access to all the other resources in the city, as well as communication to the public. Now, they have their own mechanisms for communicating, but if things are sustained, they start to really change the dynamics.
I want to talk briefly about that notification protocol, notification to the public in the event of a crisis situation or an emergency situation. How do we get the message out to our citizens?
One of the things that we've created, Mr. Mayor, and it's a rack card. It has all of our different communication methods, which talks about our website and the various communication methods we have through it. But the primary thing that we're talking about at the particular moment is the card backside, which talks about the Nixle notification platform, and it gives information on our emergency notifications, utility notifications, public safety notifications, and a number of others. But it gives you some idea of how to sign up for those notifications, and we're going to be providing that and putting it on the website as well.
We've had a couple of major emergencies in our community that I can think of, some major flooding events, and then probably most recently the Gold King mine spill of August of last year, almost a year out now. Describe the role that you and your division played in partnering to manage that crisis, particularly the Gold King mine spill.
Well, I think primarily part of what we're talking about is the notification process. We got that word out to our division and department heads. We opened our emergency operations center that we've created here. We were in close communication and coordination with San Juan County, so we were able to help them with resources, and likewise help our resources as well. So primarily we got together in our emergency operations center to begin that resource allocation and just communication.
And that's really an important point. That emergency operations center is a prime example of it's a pre-planned place that when we sound the alarm, so to speak, that about 15 people that are on this pre-planned crisis management team know where to go, where to come, and then we have everybody sitting around the table together to assess what's going on and to make the best decisions we can on behalf of resource allocation. Are we going to be able to manage this, and to get it communicated? So in that particular example, that's exactly what happened. When we heard that even the rumor that this thing was coming down the river, we activated the emergency center, pulled everybody together, immediately began to seek confirmation where it was out, what it was involved in, but we had all the right people around the same table, which really lends itself to better decision making.
Using the Gold King mine spill as an example, there was a period of time where we were not certain whether our water supply was contaminated or whether it was adequately protected. We didn't get notice of the spill until 24 hours after it occurred. And so there was a period of time when we weren't sure about the status of our water supply. How did the system in place work to the benefit of our citizens? I'm assuming there was a notification process that occurred. Notice went out to our citizens very quickly to alert them as to this potential danger to the water supply. Can you talk about that briefly?
I think in this particular case, because we didn't have Nixle in place, it was primarily notification that went out via media and Facebook. So that was the primary notification methods.
Yeah, and like you say, actually, when we first heard about it, we were told it already passed us. So when we first activated our response, we were under the impression that our water had been contaminated. So the first thing we have to do is and people are clamoring for information, the media starts calling, and the last thing you want to do is give out bad information. So by having everybody there, everybody had an assignment to go find out exactly what was going on. We quickly realized that it had not passed us yet. We got our pumps, of course, shut down immediately. That was the first action point. We shut down all of our pumps. Then we were able to verify that our water had not been compromised, and then start finding out where it was. and then just begin an orderly, responsive action planning for it.
In the emergency response world, it's developing situational awareness is what Rob is talking about, making sure we have the facts and what's actually going on.
And if we hadn't all been together, we would have been, operating blind.
Emergency preparedness is not just an institutional concern. We want to encourage all of our citizens to be personally prepared for emergencies, and I know that that's part of your responsibility, that's part of the program. Talk briefly, Eddie, about what people can do to be prepared for different kinds of emergencies. What are the basic steps that need to be taken?
Well, that's an excellent point, Mr. Mayor. We've actually created a RAC card for that as well. It's also going to be available on our website. It talks about the various things that you can do to prepare personally in your home. And of course, one of the things we keep talking about is water. So that's one of the primary things we'd like for people to be prepared in their home and have some additional water, because clearly our water's, it's a potential to either not have it and or for it to be somehow compromised. So we definitely want that. But it talks about being able to be self-sufficient for approximately 72 hours. And that's food, water, and some other various things.
As a society, we've gotten to the point where we just expect that government can solve all of our problems. But we're isolated up here in Farmington. If there was any type of a disruption of supply lines, all of a sudden if the stores didn't have food in it, something that could have been maybe a very temporary problem can turn into a full-scale panic and emergency. But if people are prepared, so imagine if recently the Animas water, this isn't hypothetical. If most residents had had several cases of water themselves, they could have managed several days of a crisis. Now obviously this extended much longer, but it's just a matter of having some reasonable things on hand.
Eddie, I want to give you the last word this morning. Is there anything that you would like to tell our viewers that we haven't touched upon already?
I guess the only thing I would probably mention is one of our primary goals is to be able to continue the operations of the city and to provide the emergency services and the regular general services that we provide every day. So that's the other thing that we're working very hard at, is to create a continuity of operations plan. And back to your previous point, Mr. Mayor, and to be prepared in your own home.
Well, I appreciate the efforts that both of you have made and are making in this regard. Our citizens deserve to have this kind of function that's working appropriately and efficiently in a local government, and they deserve the assurance that their local government is ready to assist them in these times of emergency. And I also must commend our San Juan County partners, who also are very much engaged in this emergency preparedness activity. So thank you both for being here to discuss and talk about this very important topic. We hope that those times when we have to bring forward the resources are rare, but we know they will happen, and I feel comfortable, and I want to assure our citizens that we're ready to deal with those emergencies. I want to thank all of you for viewing in to the Mayor's Table here once again this morning, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.